So now that we have spoken about how to become more independent in nuclear, we need to dive deeper into how the supply chain will be altered. We're gearing up to upgrade and maximize the existing nuclear fleet. So how do we ensure the sustainability and accessibility of a robust fuel cycle? We need to keep in mind that we will have a diverse pool of reactors. We will, of course, have new ones smaller in size, which will need new infrastructure and new technology. But we will also still need the larger ones requiring more fuel. Here to address the supply chain security for the development of small, advanced, and large reactors, please give a warm welcome to the Director General of the World Nuclear Association, Sama Bilbao y León.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you again. So I have a fabulous panel that is going to discuss how we can actually ensure that the fuel cycle supply chain is ready. So let me name them and we can join over here. So let's start with Christopher Eckerberg, who is Vice President of Nuclear Decommissioning at Vattenfall in Sweden. So we also have Lisa McBride, Vice President, Country Leader at GE Hitachi Nuclear Energy SMR in Canada. We also have Jacques Petier, Senior Vice President, Customer and Strategy from ORANO in France. We also have Rafał Kasprov, CEO of Orlen Synthos Green Energy in Poland. And last but certainly not least, we have Marilyn Cray, Vice President, Nuclear Strategy and Development and Constellation. Okay, so I think that by now you are all convinced that we are going to need lots and lots of new nuclear if we are serious about meeting climate change commitments and to do that in a cost-effective and equitable manner. So obviously we've talked a lot about large reactors, small modular reactors, advanced reactors. Now, what we are going to discuss here is that in order to ensure that these reactors are going to be successful, we actually need to focus on the entire nuclear fuel cycle. So first of all, we need to ensure that we are going to have a competitive fuel supply chain, which is obviously going to be critical. And we really need to make sure that when we develop and deploy these reactors, we are looking in the front end, having the right fuel, the right enrichment capabilities, the right fuel fabrication capabilities, but also we already start thinking or be well prepared to know what is the back end going to look like, how we are going to manage the used nuclear fuel, how we're going to deal with the waste, how we are going to decommission. So this is some of the discussions that we are going to have in this session, and clearly I couldn't be in better company to discuss all this. So I am going to start with Marilyn. So obviously you are coming from a North American utility that is certainly committed to the use of nuclear energy. So how would you characterize the landscape for both gigawatt-sized reactors, but also small modular reactors and advanced reactors in the US and globally?
Thank you, Sama. So just for background, I represent Constellation. We operate 21 units in the United States, and we just announced the acquisition of 44% of another plant. So our focus is on the continued safe operation of our fleet. We certainly see that in order to usher in the next generation of new plants, that is heavily reliant on us being successful in upholding the safety standards of the current fleet. But we're also looking to extend the life of our plants. Most of them have gone from the original 40-year license to 60, and some now looking at 80. and then in addition to that, uprating the output of our units. So while our focus remains certainly on operating our existing fleet, we're also looking at the advanced reactors. In particular, we see that these new reactors, because of their smaller size, because of their different use cases, not just making electricity, are going to be sold to a broader base of customers, many of whom may need operational support in operating these new facilities. So it's from that perspective that we see the difference really of this changing model, not just the technologies, but this pairing, well, since we're in France, just like you pair your wine with your food, you're now pairing your generation with your load. And for our existing fleet, we are getting numerous requests to have dedicated output associated with a particular customer. And then we also have customers who are looking to co-locate their facility on our site. So we're evaluating the sites with respect to that. We're also looking at hydrogen production at one of our plants that just went into operation this year. Those opportunities for co-location and really, again, that pairing of the customer demand with the generation that we have is even more prevalent with the SMRs and advanced reactors because of the smaller size. So whether it's now an SMR going to be coming to an industrial or a site or a data center, or the simultaneous construction of both the load and the generation, we're seeing that. So with respect to the fuel, we're seeing that there's going to be the greater increase, but also a much broader base of customers.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm going to turn to you, Christopher. Obviously, you are now giving the point of view of a European utility in a country that is incredibly ambitious for new nuclear. So what is Vattenfall's expectation for new nuclear, large and small?
Yeah, well, thank you, Sama. And well, if I can express one wish, it's if next WNE is held like 1 week earlier in the year, because then it's the Black Week, and then we can buy our SMEs at half price. So that's my first wish. No, to be serious, Vattenfall is a utility working for the fossil-free operations, obviously in our own operations, but we also work actively in reducing the carbon footprint of our customers and by electrifying their industrial processes. And this is what we see or expect means is going to increase the electricity demand, and some forecasts are saying it'll double until 2050. It could be more, it could be less. It obviously depends on how we do our job as well. And so we think one of the most important things is a competitive market, both when it comes to the reactor designs and also, of course, for fuel supply. When it comes to fuel supply, we've worked with several different suppliers. It's been a good strategy for us. ORANO is one of them on that side, but it worked well when we needed to shift our supplies overnight after the Russian invasion. We canceled the delivery of some Russian fuel that we had ordered. And since there is a competitive market, we could source what we needed from other sources. So that's part of the strategy. It's super important. Also, when it comes to design, we have a feasibility study ongoing now for the possibility to look at, to build 2 SMRs at our Ringhouse site. One of the parts of that feasibility study is analyzing and comparing. We now have 6 different technologies that we're looking at. We've not made a technology choice. We haven't decided if it's going to be SMRs or large scale. It will be, we're looking at projects in the near future, so it will be light water reactors, sort of conventional technology in that respect. But we haven't made any technology choices yet. So those are some of the things that are going on, and we expect this to be a very important enabler for us to keep helping our customers decarbonize their operations and indeed the whole energy system of Sweden. I think another aspect of this, which we might not always look at, I think the new build program that we're expecting now, not only in Sweden, but hopefully in all of Europe, I think it's also an opportunity to broaden our, shall we say, supply base of skills. And I'm thinking specifically about having more women join our industry. If we look at I see a big difference in our plants and operations where we have fewer women working, and if I compare it to our newer businesses, which is decommissioning and the back end, which I'm working in, we have more women. About half of our staff is women in these newer businesses, and so I hope that these new build projects can also attract more women to our industry, and I think it's a necessity. We need a broader base of skills to work with, so hopefully that's an added benefit.
Completely agree. I'm sure that Lisa will agree with that too. She's very active in women in nuclear in Canada. But I mean, you're right. We really need to have a diverse and inclusive workforce in every aspect for nuclear. So that's very important. But now I'm going to go to Lisa and maybe a little bit of a different point of view. So GE Hitachi, you are a technology developer, and obviously your reactor is a light water-cooled reactor which uses traditional fuels. But I'm sure you are looking at the current landscape and you are looking at the opportunities and the challenges that we are facing with these advanced and small modular reactors that are looking at different enrichment levels, different types of reactor fuel designs. So what is your point of view on that?
Thanks, Emma. You know, certainly when we think about the opportunities, I think the opportunities for all of us in this room are unprecedented. The time for nuclear is now. I think we're finally recognized as the clean electricity source that we in fact are. And when we think about what that means for the future, of course, we definitely need to think front end from a fuel perspective. We're well positioned to compete with renewables, but that means that we have to secure a fuel supply chain that's critical to the future deployment of the market. It is one of the key components of our strategy. We have big plans at GE. You know, the importance is really about the fuel supply through stable ally-based suppliers. And that's everything from mining to conversion through enrichment. And so I think as an industry, we really need to pay close attention to this. One of the advantages we have with the BWRX 300 is that it is LEU and that it does use our GNF2 fuel, our global nuclear fuel, that is manufactured today. It's certified. That sets us apart from others. And we definitely need to think about where those fuel supplies will come from. In the long term, when we're thinking about the opportunity for nuclear and what the market looks like, you know, we're seeing a demand for, I think I read 3 times the amount of nuclear energy in the US. In Canada, we're talking, you know, 50 gigawatts by 2050. We have big plans in Canada. My colleague Rafal will talk about Poland. You know, we're seeing a major uptake. And so as an industry, we definitely need to think about that. We are working with a number of companies to understand and expand their capabilities, and that includes the secure fuel supply, but also everything else that goes along with deploying a new technology. Supply chain, human capital, more women in the industry. And so it is important, and if it is going to be the solution that it can and should be, that means that we have to look at the enrichment capability and what the supply opportunity is, not just for our reactor, but for the industry as a whole.
Excellent. So, Jack, so I think that we are all on the same page. We are going to need to, according to me, triple the global capacity of nuclear energy by 2050. I mean, and it's not just me, it's our studies. So, to meet this demand in the time frames that are needed, and of course at the scale that is needed, we are going to really need to invest very seriously in the fuel cycle. So what do you think that the industry needs in order to unlock these investments on the timelines that we are speaking? And also, what is the conversations that we need to have with governments to make sure that they are supporting this necessary but rather large growth in nuclear?
Thanks, Sama, for this question, which is a crucial one. Let me give a key figures to illustrate that. If we want to double or even triple our nuclear output, as it was announced this morning, we will have to invest, ORANO and its competitors, in the fuel supply chain, front-end supply chain, will have to invest more than 100 billion euros by 2050. We'll have to invest to new uranium mining projects, to new conversion facilities, to new enrichment facilities, and to new fuel manufacturing facilities. So it's a huge amount. And considering the timing of regulatory and the investment processes, the first decisions will have to be taken in the years to come. Alors, the good news is that the technologies exist, so nothing to discover. But as you mentioned, there are some things to unlock to make these investments happen. And from an industrial point of view, as ORANO, I would like to highlight 4 of them. The first one is to have a stable framework in terms of safety regulations with no changes during the project investment period. So I think it's worth also for the reactors building, but it's worth also for the fuel facilities. Also, a stable support from government policy to avoid stop-and-go situations. Bon. What we heard since this morning is very encouraging for that. Second thing that I would like to highlight is that we need a stable framework also in terms of fair competition. For conversion and enrichment, today, for example, for OECD producers, we cannot sell in Russia and in China. And the same countries can sell in Europe or in US. So it's not up to the industrial to say which level they can sell in our countries, but at least we need clarity about the quotas because it knows the size of the market that we need to address, and it helps to take the necessary decision of investment. The third thing where the government can help is financing. It was very highlighted this morning by Thierry Breton and also by Raphaël Grossi. To finance the 100 billion euro I have mentioned, we'll need equity, but we'll need also debt. And for the time being, nuclear investment in the fuel cycle is not included, for example, in the European taxonomy. In addition, if you World Bank or European Bank of Investment are very shy to finance and at least to finance investment in this nuclear supply chain. I heard that the European Bank of Investment is now called Bank of Climate. So I think in this regard, they should be less shy and finance these nuclear facilities in the front-end fuel cycle. This is very important because if these financial institutions start to finance, the other banks will follow. And last but not least, and this is for our customers, and they help us, we need also long-term contracts. We need long-term contracts to secure this investment, and thanks to their support, we were pleased last month to announce the expansion of our enrichment facility in France with an expansion of capacity by 30%. So this is very important also to help us to decide this investment, not only for ORANO, but also for our competitors. And if these 4 conditions are fulfilled, I'm very confident that within the fuel cycle industry, we'll be able to answer to the increase of demand. It's a very exciting time, but I can assure you that ORANO and all our competitors in the fuel cycle chain are very in this journey. Now, beyond these 4 compulsory conditions to make it happen, I would like to stress 2 additional items. I hope I'm not too long, Sama. First, in uranium mining, because here it's not just a question of technology, you also need to find new deposits of uranium. And for this, I welcome all the countries who will leave the ban in terms of exploration in uranium, but also mining in uranium, and thanks to Sweden, because they are doing this move currently. And my second remark is for the AMR. The fuel supply chain doesn't exist at all for the advanced modular reactor. This is an energy market, so it's very difficult for the fuel cycle operators to invest in that, and it's very important that we have a public financing for that, because it's a nascent market, and we're not able to supply this fuel market if we have no public support from the governments. Thank you, Sama, for that.
Well, thank you very much. Very, very detailed answer. Thank you very much, Jack. Rafael, now you bring a completely different point of view. So you are bringing the point of view of an end energy user. So obviously, you have chosen the BWR X300 as an opportunity for Poland and to make a huge energy transformation in Poland. So tell us a little bit more about how your project is going to drive this, and how do you see this in the context of the entire nuclear fuel cycle?
Thank you, Sama, for an invitation to this panel. And let me first ask, have you seen the map of Europe CO2 emission? There is always a nice green color from France, nice color from North Europe, and there is brown, sometimes black place, which is called Poland, where I'm coming from. So it means only one thing: there is no way back for nuclear energy for Poland. Anything happened, we have to continue nuclear projects, large and small, because the market requires for us to deploy SMRs, to deploy nuclear technology, and definitely industry is strongly supportive for nuclear projects, including SMRs. It's why my company, Orlen Synthos Green Energy, has two shareholders. One, its largest state-owned company in Central Europe called Orlen, and second, its largest private industrial group. I'm especially saying industrial. Yes, we come from industry. We have chemical companies across Central Europe, and we realized one day we need to have stable, cheap, decarbonized energy sources. It's why we decided to invest into SMRs. And after 2 years of very advanced process, we chose BWRX 300 and start cooperation with GE Hitachi, also with Ontario Power Generation and Laurentis, which we follow because we are new guys in nuclear club. We're starting the business from the scratch in reality. This what I would like to say is that one of the most important discovery for me when we build supply chain for a fleet of SMRs, which we're going to deploy in Poland and Central Europe. One of the best discoveries is how mature is fuel. GNF2 from GE Hitachi, assembled in Spain, and with the ORANO potential supply, the supply chain of fuel looks excellent, especially also from the regulatory perspective. We are in Europe, fuel is licensed in Europe. Spain produce ENUSA, and ORANO is also one of the great member of the potential supply chain for our fleet of the reactors.
Good. Thank you, Rafael. So, Lisa, maybe building up on what we heard from Rafael, and also the big picture that we just heard from Jack. When you are thinking of a secure and competitive fuel supply, what do you think are the essential components on your point of view to make sure that this is truly a secure nuclear fuel supply chain?
I mean, I think my colleagues have touched on a couple of the points that I'd make on this, right? It is about having a fair and competitive market price for uranium. With the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we're seeing a major disruption in the supply chain, which is causing an awful lot of commotion. It's forced the entire industry to sort of sit back and think about how to replace that supply. And when we think about that, we need to think about a couple of things. It's not just about supply. It is about having a fair, competitive market value for it, as Jacques mentioned. He mentioned that it's a 1 billion euro investment by 2050 in his. That's significant, and we need to think about what that means in terms of deploying nuclear energy in a way that it is cost competitive with other forms of clean electricity generation. So this isn't an ORANO problem. This is an everybody problem when we think about what it means for the future of the industry. We need to think about secure supply, but we also need to think about how we're going to manufacture it and how we're going to remain cost competitive on LCOE as we see the uranium market prices increase. So I think those are, to me, the key things that are critical for us going forward.
Very good. So maybe I'll turn back to you, Rafael, because you already pointed out a couple of aspects that you have specifically been exploring in your particular project. But obviously, this needed expansion and growth on the fuel supply chain clearly brings opportunities for everybody and as well as challenges, but clearly let's focus on the opportunities. So what does this mean for organizations like ORANO, of course, in USA, and perhaps others in Europe?
Frankly speaking, we as a company, we're building our competences in nuclear. So we have great companies we're cooperating with, Ontario Power Generation, GE Hitachi, and we try to follow what our big brothers are doing, positive sense. And I believe that in almost every element, the supply chain, we're going to build together, including standard design, when we are part of the project, including supply chain to deliver reactor pressure vessels, and all long lead items are based on the cooperation between Canada, US, and Poland, except a fuel, which I believe can be manufactured fully in Spain by the GE factories and with French supplier. We expect that with this perspective of potential fleet of SMRs, not only from us in Poland and Central Europe, the capacity of fuel is already well managed by GE Hitachi and partners from GE. We have numbers which are satisfying for us if you think about capacity of production and potential investment in new lines for GNF2, which can be very, I don't want to say easy, nuclear is nothing easy, which I realize already, but that can grow.
Excellent, very good. Marilyn, obviously Constellation, you have a lot of experience operating a large fleet of large reactors, but clearly now we are moving potentially to add into this fleet small modular reactors, advanced reactors. What are the impacts that you see? Obviously the front end of the fuel cycle we've discussed a little bit, but also the back end of the fuel cycle.
We're seeing that there's going to be impacts on both the front end and the back end of the fuel cycle. As Lisa mentioned, there's a class of plants that are all going to use the low enriched uranium, which is what the existing fleet, at least in the US, uses. That's less than 5%. Although there are some also looking of the existing plants for LEU plus, which is that 5 to 10, which will allow certain designs to go to a 24-month fuel cycle. But and then, as was mentioned by Christopher, the impact of the HALEU supply and no longer sourcing from Russia. So that is out there, and that has caused such volatility in the fuel supply that it has driven the prices up. So there's a lot of things to look at now on the front end, and that's really around needing to look at these cost estimates for fuel through the lens of the current reality. So not just using aspirational goals for the fuel, but really what is it going to take? And also not underestimating the effort, time, and cost associated with getting fuel qualified through the respective regulator. So, obviously Framatome, GE Hitachi, and Westinghouse are established fuel providers. But there's a lot of companies out there that are looking to do that. So I don't know, I would suggest the collaboration perhaps among some of those going for TRISO, or the partnering with existing fuel providers, because basically you just don't know what you don't know on that front. And I would say that the other piece is understanding what the expectation is going to be for these new owners. So again, if you look at large companies, EDF or Constellation, we have a dedicated organization for procuring fuel that looks at all aspects of the process, whether we work with miners, the milling, the conversion, the enrichment, and then obviously at the end, the fabricators. So, what role is the developer going to expect the new owner to do, or is that going to be something that would be provided that service? So that understanding that division of responsibility is going to be very, very key, because you have newcomers, Rafal, who might be a fuel buyer. Hopefully he will be very, very soon. And then I say on the back end, the idea that there's new possibilities with respect to reprocessing, and because of the new designs and because of the new fuel, and some of the technologies actually have the companion where they can reprocess fuel from existing and new reactors, and then that turns into feedstock for new fuel. And then I'd say lastly, the other piece is storage. So even with reprocessing, there's going to be a need for long-term storage, at least of the actinides, and perhaps still interim storage. So, what are the understandings with respect to that? Currently, we store all the fuel that we've, the spent fuel that we've created, but I don't know that that's necessarily the expectation and the desire, perhaps, again, for this new class of owners that are coming forward.
Yes, so many things to think about, I think, yes. So, Christopher, I'm going to turn to you because, as we just heard, it is very important to not forget the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle. So, when it comes to the sustainability of nuclear, it is essential for us to demonstrate that we have a plan for the use nuclear fuel, that we have facilities, that we have technology to actually implement that plan, and then of course for the commissioning. So I think that Sweden, of course, is really well ahead of perhaps many countries in many of these aspects. Maybe you can give us a little bit of an update on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it comes to decommissioning, it's obviously an obligation. It's something we have to do, and it's something we need to do to show credibility, that we can take responsibility for a safe and efficient dismantling, show we can handle the whole life cycle of the plant. But I think we sometimes forget dismantling is an opportunity too. These plants are usually situated on great sites with good access to grids and stuff like that. So I think there's every reason for us utilities to dismantle as fast as reasonably possible. So not only to show that we take responsibility, but to also gain some commercial opportunities with these sites. And when it comes to the final storage, I agree. Whether you do reprocessing or not, we essentially have the same challenge. We need some form of geological disposal. So I think we all share the same challenge there. Sweden was fortunate. I mean, well, in Sweden, we've chosen the direct disposal route. By Swedish law, spent fuel is waste. Obviously, that could change sometime in the future, but that's the way it is now. We were forced very early on to invest in R&D on the back end, and so we spent 40 years developing a safe geological storage concept for the spent fuel. We have a central interim storage for the spent fuel. We have a final repository for the low and medium active waste in operation already. That's being expanded now to be able to fit decommissioning waste. So we were fortunate that we were actually forced by law to invest into the back end as a condition to start our reactors in the 80s, essentially. We also put a robust financing scheme in place. So there's a state-controlled fund where we've paid in per kilowatt hour some cents every year. So there's 6 billion euros in that fund, give or take. So that's a very stable financing for this. And I think this is a good example. Also, we should continue working in international cooperation in this area. We've shared a lot of our technology and developed a lot of it together with our Finnish colleagues in Posiva. We have a lot of exchange with NWMO and ANDRA in France and the DOE. So I think this is an area where we can gain a lot by international cooperation, and we're not competitors in this respect. We all have the same challenge. So yeah, that's where we are.
No, I would like to highlight two things that you said that I think are very important, which is the used fuel that, well, in many countries by law right now is considered waste, but many of us may consider that as a potential future resource that we shouldn't forget. And then the second thing that I think that many are starting to realize, and clearly you have already, is that these sites that are being decommissioned, this is not just we have to decommission. This is an opportunity to provide perhaps future units, different technologies. You have a site with a community that is already supportive and knowledgeable of nuclear. You have a grid connection. So there is many opportunities there for the next, the second life, if you wish, of those sites. So I think that's very interesting. So let me go to you, Jack, because building up with what Christopher just said, and also remembering what I mentioned earlier, that we are really, we have a great ambition to grow enormously the amount of nuclear. So I think that it is essential that, as I said, that we do our best to make sure that we have recycling schemes, that we are recycling, if possible, this used fuel that we know is a resource. But also to ensure that this may be a very important resource in the future if we really want to power this enormous 3 times as big fleet or whatever it end up being. So what is your opinion as far as recycling schemes and maybe different options to make the most of this resource?
Thank you, Sama. In this regard, I think that back-end policy can be, for sure, very different, and it's basically a national policy. We can see that some countries are chosen closed cycle, what we call a closed cycle policy, and other ones an open cycle policy. So whatever, as ORANO, we provide solution for both. We can provide solution for storage of spent fuel, but we can provide also, thanks to our platform of LAG and MELOX, our MOX production facility, we can also offer solution for processing. But whatever the decision, it's very important that it's addressed at the very start of any new project in terms of new builds. We discussed that with Rafal a few months ago, and in Poland, they start to think about their back-end policy right now. Because in terms of public acceptance, it's very, very important to give clarity to the people at the start of these projects. So in terms of processing, yes, of course, France, you know that France has chosen this policy, and today it will allow EDF to save up to 30% of their need in terms of natural uranium. So in terms of sovereignty, in terms of circular economy, and I would say even in terms of economics, because you have seen that the price of natural uranium have increased a lot, it makes quite a lot of sense. And today we are working with EDF and with also the French state to study the extension of life of our facilities, like the reactors. We will try to extend the life of time of our facility in LAG and MELOX, and we are already thinking about on new facilities to be able to reprocess up to the end of the century. And we think that for sure for the current reactors, but also to be able to reprocess some fuel from maybe advanced modular reactors, to be able to do some fuel for advanced modular reactors, because we cannot exclude that in the second half of this century, maybe we will have AMR like fast breeder reactors or other reactors. So we are thinking about that, and the first thing is for sure to give EDF the possibility to reprocess up to the end of this century, because as you know, President Macron has decided to launch a new fleet of EPR. So it's very important that we have this facility, because for EDF, it's really a question of acceptability also of this new nuclear program. So really, in France, the fact that we minimize the spent fuel in the pools is very important. So for sure, we offer also this solution for foreign customers, but whatever, we have plenty of solutions to address these issues, which is, as you mentioned, quite critical.
Very good. So we are getting, we still have a few minutes, but not too much. So we have time perhaps to go around and maybe try to close this panel with a uplifting, ambitious, forward-looking opinion. So if we were to have this panel again in a couple of years from now at the next World Nuclear Exhibition, so which major accomplishment in the context of the global nuclear fuel cycle would you like to be announcing here in this panel? So, Christopher.
Okay, well, I'm not a fuel expert, but I've worked in the back end for a couple of years. I think it'd be really great if two countries could announce that they're doing a joint geological disposal or something, some real international cooperation in the back end, because it's something that most countries are trying to solve on their own right now, and maybe that's not the most rational way to do it.
No, I love that. I mean, of course, when I say the nuclear fuel cycle, is the nuclear fuel cycle. So certainly that does most certainly include the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle. That would be very exciting to actually optimize and collaborate in having the best use of talent and resources for that. Very good idea. Lisa.
I mean, I think there's so many things I'd like to see us be announcing in 2 years, but I mean, to have our fuel supply secure, cost-effective, affordable, and across ally-based regions, I think would be something that I would be really excited about at the next WNE.
Yeah, exciting. Jacques.
I think that in 2 years, if we have been able to demonstrate to the banks that we have the right technologies, the right competencies, and that we are able to deliver on time and budget, and so they will be able to finance us, it will be a great progress for our journey.
Very good. Rafael. Okay, or Marilyn.
Okay, thank you. I would actually might have two. One would be that we have the fuel qualification schedule has the certainty that it is commensurate with the delivery of the associated reactor. And then I think following up on what was said, that we have the fuel supply, but what would happen between now and then, that is, there's more clarity with respect to the timing and the need for fuel so that Jack and ORANO and the others can make those investments and be ready for that. So, because, you know, just to justify that investment for expanded capacity.
So from our perspective, I think the most important fact is that in case of some SMRs project, there is, don't be angry, but it's growing bubble with a lot of expectations about the problems to deliver. And the fuel is, I think, one of the most critical factor. So I'm happy about our choice that we chose the technology BWX300 with already licensed fuel in US and in Europe. And we already recognize fuel cycle, which make this easy for our regulator to understand and help us to use this fuel in our project. And 2-3 years from now, I would be happy to make first order.
Very nice. So you are listening to the very good news that we will have in the next WNE, right? Now, so I am about to close this session, but perhaps I will try to extract for you a couple of points that were more poignant to me, so hopefully they actually make sense to you. So number one, and I think that this has been the point of this session, while of course everybody is very excited about new reactors, large, small, medium, advanced, of any kind, this is obviously very exciting and we are all working towards making sure that those reactors succeed. let's not forget that they are not going to do this in isolation. So let's make sure that we are working together to make sure that we have the robust, stable supply chain that we need with all the components that we discussed. I mean, obviously, the financing, the long-term visibility, the clarity, so we all can make investments. And also, we also need to think about what is it that we are needing. So do we need HALO fuel? Do we need different types of fuel designs? All those things, we really need to think about them in advance. And then the other side of this equation, what I think is incredibly important and we can never forget, is the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle. So we know that nuclear is sustainable because obviously throughout the history of nuclear, we have managed and worried about our used fuel and our waste in a very serious and sustainable manner. But we need to continue demonstrating that that's the case. So when we have these advanced reactor designs or maybe small modular reactors with different fuel cycles, let's not forget to have an answer prepared and to have the technology ready to be implemented to manage that used fuel and that nuclear waste. And certainly last but not least, let's not forget that decommissioning, it is, yes, perhaps a challenge, but in many occasions an opportunity that we cannot forget as we move forward. So this is my big notes. Hopefully, I don't know if anybody has other notes. I would love to hear if you heard something else that was interesting. But I want to close this session, but please asking all of you to help me thank the fabulous panel of experts that I have here with me today. Thank you. And of course, please help me thank ORANO for organizing this panel. And please, we wish you all a fabulous rest of your day and the rest of the World Nuclear Exhibition. Thank you.